Hello, my name is Fritzy, and in this video, I'm going to tell you about my experience returning to Singapore from overseas after the COVID lockdown. I'm recording this video on the second day of my quarantine, or what Singapore calls stay home notice, which I'm currently serving at a JW Marriott Hotel in South Beach. I arrived yesterday, and since then I've been getting a lot of questions from friends and friends of friends about what to do and how to prepare. So I decided to consolidate all the questions that I got into 5, and I hope that this would be very helpful to people who are currently overseas and are wanting to get back to Singapore. The short answer is I came back from the Philippines. So I traveled from Manila, but to give a brief background, I actually left Singapore on the 11th of March for Paris. About the same time when I left, France was included in the list of countries to watch out for. So Singapore had this list of countries with rising COVID cases, and France was just included there. And at the same time, they started requiring companies who have employees coming from those countries to apply for entry permits before they could return. And also at the same time, they imposed restrictions to the number of people that can come in a single day. For my return trip, my company had to apply for the entry permit, but it was rejected. So I must have been rejected 3 times because of quota, until the point when Singapore finally decided to fully close its borders for anyone trying to come in, not just from those countries. And that's how I ended up being in the Philippines for 4 months. First things first, your human resources department needs to apply for it on your behalf. You can't do it on your own. Whether you already are employed in Singapore or are still just about to be employed, it's still the same. And one thing that is needed is for you to determine the date of your return. So you don't have to book the flight yet, you just have to figure out which date you want to come back. If that is approved, the Ministry of Manpower will always give you 3 days to come back based on the date that you gave. The date that you gave will always be the middle date. So if you, for example, chose to be back on the 16th, MOM will give you the 15th, the 16th, and the 17th. If your date changes, or if something happens, like for instance for me, I was already approved, and then suddenly my airline canceled that flight, and there was no other flight available within the date range that the MOM gave, so I had to reapply for the entire thing. So once you get the approval, there are a bunch of documents that you need to print out. First being the actual letter coming from the MOM that will be sent to your HR. You need to print out the entire email, including all the annexes. It has all the guidelines with regards to the stay home notice, swab testing, transportation. Second is very important as well, but is not written in the email. It's the electronic health declaration. You need to fill this out 3 days before your flight. It will not be valid if it's before that. It has a self-declaration of your health status at the moment. Did you come in contact with COVID cases? Or very important question is, did you visit any hospital in the last 14 days? So if you don't need to visit a hospital, don't, because this question entails a lot of questioning once you arrive here. But of course, if you visited a hospital for some reason, you have to declare it because honesty. Other questions include like critical medical conditions, and have you been to other places in China 7 days prior to your departure for Singapore. So you have the option to print it out like what I did, or to just retrieve it electronically. They have a tarpaulin with a QR code that you can use to retrieve it. I found that some people had a hard time doing that, so it might be helpful to just print it out anyway. Specific to my fellow Filipinos, you still need to get your OEC exemption. Get the number if you're working in Singapore. But if you're not, if you've just had your IPA or your in principle approval, you need to print that out as well. The 2 additional documents that we secured are my quarantine clearance from the barangay for completing my quarantine, my 14 days, my quarantine certificate as well. So these are things specifically for Filipinos. So those are the documents that you need. This is something that you won't know until after you're done with all the immigration procedures once you arrive in Singapore. So they will not tell you. I think they do it by random though. Once they've probably grouped 12 to 15 individuals, then you all board the bus together and the bus will take you somewhere you don't know until you get there. But in terms of the procedure, so right after you step out of the plane, there will be temperature checks. And then along the way, walking to the immigration, there are temperature check terminals as well. They don't necessarily stop you unless they probably see an anomaly in your scan. And right before you get down to the escalator going to the immigration, there might be a little queue there. Once they allow you in, there will be chairs and they're gonna ask you to sit on the chairs, and an immigration officer from ICA, Immigration and Checkpoints Authority, will come and check all your documents, and if they're complete, then you can move on to the next stage, which is a couple more immigration officers on a desk who will validate all your documents. They will ask you a few questions about yourself, and then they'll give you the stay home notice guide. They're gonna put a sticker on you, and once you have that sticker, then you'll proceed to the last immigration officer. The electronic gates don't work, so you all have to go through the officers. And once you're done with that, you get your luggage, and the last step is another desk where they're gonna need your boarding pass, and I believe that's where they assign you the hotels, but they won't tell you. They're just gonna ask you to proceed. They're gonna group you in with a bunch of other people, and then you'll go to your hotel. At the hotel itself, there will be further briefing.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to JW Marriott Singapore.
About the stay home notice, about the rules and specific to the hotel where you're staying. For this, I'm gonna share this table that shows the measures for inbound travelers to Singapore. In summary, it says that all travelers, including Singapore citizens, permanent residents, and long-term pass holders with a valid approval for entry that came from the following countries. Okay, listen to this. Australia, Brunei, Hong Kong, Japan, Macau, mainland China, New Zealand, Republic of Korea, Taiwan, and Vietnam. They can come in, they can serve their 14-day stay-home notice for free. Only the swab tests will be chargeable. For all other travelers coming from other countries outside of what I just mentioned, Singapore citizens and permanent residents, they can still have their 14-day stay-home notice for free. They only have to pay for the swab testing. But for long-term pass holders or work pass holders, everything is chargeable. How much is it? $2,000 for the 14-day stay at the hotel. And the COVID-19 swab test will be $200. So those are inclusive of GST. Technically, it's the employer that's supposed to pay for that. I guess if you're outside of the country on an official business trip. But for people who might be on a personal trip, it would be yours to pay. I believe the website for the Ministry of Manpower would have all the information that you need. You just have to read through them. So that's it for my video. I hope you found all the information that I shared helpful. One thing that I forgot to mention, apart from all the documents that you have to bring, is that you must not forget your thermometer. You will need this because you will have to take your temperature 3 times a day to report back to the MOM. My next video will be all about my experience throughout this whole SHN period, so stay tuned and watch out for that. Thanks for watching and take care. Cheers!